think the best way to describe what's happening is that you're seeing the process of healing continue. The economy has now been growing for more than a year. The private sector of the United States, businesses across the country, have brought back more than 750,000 jobs since the beginning of the recovery. We've seen private sector job growth come back more quickly than happened in the last 2 recessions. But it's not strong enough, it's not fast enough. And even though parts of the American economy now are looking quite strong, the major global businesses of the United States are exceptionally good, exceptionally creative, innovative, of making things that the world needs. So you're seeing those parts of the economy look quite strong, but lots of the American economy is still suffering from the scars caused by the crisis and, frankly, decades of underinvestment in middle class and infrastructure that preceded the crisis. It's going to take a while for us to heal that. Our job is to make sure we're doing as much as we can to reinforce that process of recovery.
There are going to be some people in the state of Ohio, where the president was today, 10.3% unemployment there, who are going to say, listen, you all have had the keys to the economy for a while now. We gave you a chance to fix things. They still seem pretty bleak out here.
The actions that the president took, Congress made possible alongside what the Fed did, were enormously powerful and effective of breaking the back of this financial crisis and starting the process of recovery. Again, it's been more than a year since we've been growing. You're seeing private sector job growth come back, again, sooner than many expected, sooner than you saw in past recoveries, but not strong enough yet. And that unemployment rate is still unacceptably high, and you're still seeing people bearing the scars and behaving with the scars of the damage caused by the crisis. It's going to take some time to heal that. Again, our job is to make sure we're doing everything we can, recognizing we don't have unlimited resources, and you have to do things that are going to have a big bang for the buck and be targeted, again, help strengthen the private sector. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can to accelerate that process of getting Americans back to work.
All right, let me ask you about the Bush tax cuts, because Republicans have suggested that the uncertainty over the Bush tax cuts is what's holding the economy back more than anything else. Maybe you even agree with that, the uncertainty alone, I don't know. But let me ask you what the president said today. Did we hear from this president a veto threat, that he would veto anything that would extend the Bush tax cuts for the top 2%, even on a temporary basis?
What I believe and what the president believes. The most important thing we can do for confidence and recovery is to make it absolutely clear, crystal clear to Americans today, that we're going to extend those tax cuts that go to about 97–98% of working Americans across the country. Now, there are some people who want to wait on that so they can help try to extend the tax cuts for the richest 2% of Americans. I think that's unfair. I think it's bad policy. I think that uncertainty would be damaging for recovery. Now,
there's some Democrats in that group.
I think very few. I think, again, what Republicans in Congress want to do is they want us to go out and borrow $700 billion from our children, from investors around the world, and give that money to, again, the richest 2% of Americans. And that is not responsible policy. I think there's no credible argument for that. If Republicans in Congress want to join with the president to provide more support for recovery, there are much more effective uses of the taxpayers' money, including things like the president proposed today, to help strengthen business investment, help improve our nation's infrastructure.
What about a temporary extension? Even the president's former budget director, Peter Orszag, I know you read his column. It's been a hot topic of conversation here. He says, listen, it's not the preference of this president or even perhaps Peter Orszag, but it's a reasonable political compromise in this current environment to provide that certainty.
Disagrees with that. I disagree with that. And again, what the Republicans in Congress are proposing, and they've been very clear about this, very straightforward, is that they view temporary as a way to make permanent these tax cuts that go to the 2% most fortunate, highest earning Americans in the country. Again, to do that requires going out and borrowing $700 billion from our children. And again, I don't think that's a responsible act for this country today. And again, it's not a good use of taxpayers' money, and if Republicans think that the economy needs more support, there's much better ways to do that, including what the president proposed, and we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure we get an outcome on those terms.
Is gridlock a real possibility here? I mean, some people have sort of discounted the possibility you guys could not reach any sort of agreement on this. These tax rates go up on everyone January 1st.
Again, there's no reason why we can't move now to make sure that we are giving Americans full clarity of what the taxes are going to pay going forward. We're going to preserve these tax cuts for middle-class Americans. No reason to hold that decision hostage to a broader debate about whether it makes sense for the country to extend those tax cuts, make permanent those tax cuts for the top 2% earners. Again, I think that's irresponsible policy. I do not believe, Americans disagree about what the right role of government in society is. We've had that debate for centuries. We'll have it in the future. But I don't think there's any credible argument that the role of government, the function of government, is to go borrow hundreds of billions of dollars from future generations or from investors around the world so that we can give those resources to the top 2% of high-earning Americans in the country. Again, much better ways to help reinforce recovery that are going to be good for long-term growth.
People may not be aware that you potentially could have the power, the authority here as Treasury Secretary, if the tax rates were to rise, to hold withholding rates down. First of all, is that something you even looked at, a scenario that you've considered in any way?
It is inconceivable to me that Washington will not find a way to make sure that we are extending those tax cuts that, again, more than 97% of working Americans depend on, as they should, and we should be able to do that. It's easy to do, and my view, frankly, is let's go do that now.